https www.reddit.com best of Redditor updates comments 1jr2xv qua new updates data for expecting sex on or date recap. To give the background, Original Poster and his wife have a great relationship. Original Poster arrange a date night every month for both himself and his wife, such as dinner somewhere, and grab drinks afterwards, sometimes with friends. He makes sure there is a babysitter for their children, and they are being fed. This month, Original Poster has an evening planned, a fantastic dinner, and a nearly wine bar for drinks after. Original Poster's wife had been texting with the other couple to meet up for drinks. The husband joined Original Poster and his wife at a local bar after taking his wife home. When it was getting late, it was time for Original Poster and his wife to get home to their kids. She didn't want the evening to end, so the three ended up at Original Poster's house for another drink. Original Poster was ready to call it a night after staying up late with his wife and their friend. His wife didn't want the night to end, so she asked for 10 more minutes. It wasn't until 3 a.m. when the wife finally came into the bedroom and she was drunk. Original Poster is now wide awake and asked her if she wants to have sex. She declined and wanted to go sleep, which was fair for Original Poster. He felt frustrated and abandoned because she spent her drinking time with someone else and broke her promise about going to bed at a reasonable time with Original Poster. He mentioned it was the fourth date when the date night ended with having no intimacy at all. When Original Poster said that, it upset his wife, Original Poster, then answers questions for Redditors. He gave a small update in the original post where he apologized to his wife for getting in a fight, but made up and decided on how to have their date nights. Just two of them and other nights with the other couple. Update. It has been almost a month since Original Poster posted about the date night he had with his wife, which resulted with her hanging out with their friend, the husband, until 3 a.m. Original Poster informed Reddit that they were right to suspect something between his wife and their male friend. Original Poster was unpacking the car where his wife left her phone in there. A text message popped up from their friend, telling her how he wanted to kiss her and wanted to have a night out with her. Original Poster also discovered more text messages between his wife and the husband. They had been going on dates during the days when Original Poster was working. Original Poster confronted his wife, who said that it was an emotional affair. She told Original Poster she still loved him, but she enjoyed the attention. Update. 4 days later, after the last update, Original Poster shared he had conversations with his wife about the emotional affair with Rick. The husband of the other couple mentioned, Jacques, Original Poster's former friend. Original Poster's wife has apologized, and it turned out that the timeline of events was not bad as Original Poster originally thought. Original Poster gives the backstory on Rick and his wife. They had been dealing with marital issues for a while, which Original Poster and his wife were aware of. Few months prior to the date night, in the original post, things were getting bad, and Rick started to talk with Original Poster's wife as if she was his therapist. It started once every week before it got to several times a week. Original Poster and his wife went on a ski trip with 5 other families, including Rick and his wife. The trip was bad for Rick because he had been fighting with his wife. He got drunk and wanted to talk with Original Poster's wife as the therapist. Rick expressed his feelings for Original Poster's wife. She told him to back off and realized she should have told Original Poster, but she didn't want to mess up the trip for the whole friend group. After the trip, Rick's marriage took a turn for the worse, and it showed the divorce was taking place. At the same time, Original Poster was working 60 hours every week due to a new division at his company. With the issues going on, Rick and Original Poster's wife were feeling isolated. Rick started to call Original Poster's wife every day and drinking heavily. Original Poster asked why his wife didn't tell him. She didn't want him to blow up the friend group, and she was enjoying attention she received. Original Poster decided to do couple therapy with his wife. And for her, she wants to do individual therapy to deal with her own issues. He hopes to update in a few months. Update. Original Poster shares an update for the last few months. He was happy to report he and his wife are in a good place and set the boundaries on Rick. Going no contact was the plan, but Rick decided to call Original Poster's wife, begging to talk with her because he was making threats on himself. Rick was still drinking heavily and wanted Original Poster's wife to leave him, wanting to tell everyone about the emotional affair. Rick started to have an obsession with Original Poster's sister-in-law wife's sister, having drinks together and talking daily. He is still married, but the divorce seems to be imminent. When original poster found out about the affair a few months early, he managed to work through the issues with his wife, including improving their communication. Update. This is part 5 of the ongoing circus that is my personal life. In my last post, a lot of you expressed concern, surprise, or anger that my sister-in-law was now meeting up with Rick. Those are all probably valid reactions to this news. Yesterday, I decided that we should figure out what is going on between the two of them, and my wife and I reached out to sister-in-law. I'm glad we did because things just keep getting weirder and weirder. Rick and sister-in-law have met up 5 or 6 times, either for coffee or drinks. The most recent and likely final meetup was actually at Rick's house one evening. His wife and daughter were out of town visiting family. Rick had to work and couldn't go. And he had the place to himself, so he invited sister-in-law over for a drink. While hanging out, he told sister-in-law that he believes he was married both to my wife and to sister-in-law in prior lives, and that he is glad to have been reunited with them. He then told sister-in-law that she was beautiful and put his hand on the side of her face, as one might do to one's partner. In my view, it is a fairly intimate act. This perhaps unsurprisingly freaked sister-in-law out. To give her credit, she told Rick that he was being highly inappropriate, that he needed to stop, and that he couldn't keep taking someone trying to be a friend to him as showing interest in him. She then scolded him for doing this first to my wife and then to her. It's the sort of thing I wish my wife had told him when he started being inappropriate with her. From what I understand, she then left. She has been ghosting him since then. Rick has apparently frantically texted her dozens and dozens of times. Sister-in-law emphasized to us that she had no romantic interest in Rick and was just trying to be a friend to him. It's all just odd to me. I've known Rick for years and I feel like the current Rick is a stranger. It makes me wonder if I ever actually knew the real Rick. I guess not. Update. For the last few months, it seemed like this saga was finally behind me. But that is not how life works, and the phantom of Rick reared its head yet again. I opened my laptop and noticed that my wife had left her email account logged in. It was probably an invasion of privacy, but we had agreed that either of us could always look at the other's phones, email, etc. So I snooped and searched to see if Rick had ever emailed her. There were a few innocent emails and one that sent me into a rage. The email was from Rick to my wife's work email and was truly unhinged. It was pages and pages of Rick professing his undying love to my wife. In the email, Rick went on and on about how my wife cutting contact with him has broken him, how she is his soulmate and the only woman he has ever truly loved, and how he has tried for months to show her that he is the man for her, and that he would be a better spouse than me, with a comment about how I don't treat her like she deserves, and that he wants to help her raise our kids and his kid together. He adds that she is the first person he thinks about when he wakes up, and the last person he thinks about when he goes to sleep, that he cries every day thinking of her, and knowing that she slipped away, and that his last thought in life when he passes away will be of her. He then lists his favorite memories with her, such as the time they went on a lunch date together, hugging her so he can smell her, playing guitar for her, her smile, singing songs together, and the time they sat together and watched shooting stars. We did a family trip together, but I had to fly out a day later than everyone else due to work. And apparently the first night the two of them stayed up and watched shooting stars after everyone else went to bed. He then begs her to reconsider because he doesn't want her to wake up one day, 10 years from now, and realize that she made a mistake staying with me, and that he is willing to wait until the day he dies to be with her because he will never stop loving her. He further adds he feels hurt that she seemingly enjoyed his attention, but never had any intention of being with him. As I noted above, finding this sent me into a rage, as I felt that my wife betrayed me by not telling me that Rick sent this. I am still a little hurt that she didn't disclose it, but her perspective was that she had gone non-contact with him. He sent an email to try to get around being blocked on the phone, and that it was clearly unhinged. So she just ignored it, which is true. She never replied. She knew that I would be upset if I saw it, and that she and I are doing much better, and she didn't want to allow Rick to ruin things by being a jackass, especially when she has been doing right by me. I disagree with her logic and continue to believe that she should have immediately told me, and she understands that now and will do so if anything like this happens again. But I am not mad at her for it. The peculiar thing is that discovering the email has massively improved my mental state and happiness. First, I now know with a high degree of confidence that nothing physical ever happened. My wife had already convinced me that this was the case, but this confirmed it. Rick would have at least tangentially mentioned it in his list of favorite memories if anything had occurred. Second, the email confirmed that my wife had truly gone non-contact with him. A large portion of the email was about how being completely cut off from her was ruining him. Again, my wife had already convinced me that this was the case, but it is always nice to have external confirmation. Third, it confirmed that while my wife acted inappropriately, she never really gave in to him. The email was in large part a story of unrequited love. Rick was upset in the email that he showered her with praise and attention, but never really got anything out of it. And finally, the email is the ramblings of a sad little man. As much as I personally suffered post-discovery of the affair, Rick has suffered to a much higher degree. He's not doing well, and this email showed the depths of his despair. Perhaps it is bad to admit, but I've been experiencing significant schadenfreude knowing that Rick has been suffering. He deserves it. I'm furious at Rick. We had reached a détente a while back, and I've been civil with him the last few times I've seen him. At one point, I had straight up asked him to his face what his motives had been and what he had been trying to accomplish with respect to his relationship with my wife. He had the nerve to tell me that he had no real plan or goal and was just sad and depressed and looking for a friend, and admitted he had made a few drunk mistakes and wished he could take them back. The scumbag lied to my face. The email confirmed that he was trying to convince my wife to leave me, even after the affair had ended. I'm inevitably going to run into him again before too long, and I don't know how I am going to react, but probably not well. I really want to punch him, but I know that is probably not a mature choice, even if he deserves to have the crap beaten out of him. My wife had an interesting perspective, which was that the most soul-crushing way to get my revenge would be to grab her and kiss her right in front of him the next time we run into him, as it would flaunt that I have what he desired more than anything but could never have. And the more I have thought about it, the more I know she is right. Petty? Sure, but I could use some vengeance right now. Relevant comments. Commenter, I love the idea of a kiss. Rick is stalking your wife. Not good at all. She handled it well. She probably didn't tell you because she feared an escalation, physical violence, etc. The only AH in this is your ex-friend. Your wife is a victim, not a perpetrator. You're stuck in the middle. As it's her idea for the kids, go for it. She wouldn't have suggested it if she didn't want AH to receive a clear message from both of you, as a strong unit. Original poster. Yeah, the weirder this has gotten has really shown me that my wife was a victim in all of this too. She has some guilt, to be sure, but I have a ton of sympathy seeing how everything played out and how much of a bad actor he is. And she's even more sick of his crap than I am. She views him as an emotional terrorist. Commenter 2. Have you outed your ex-friend to your shared friends group? If not, it would not be a bad idea. If he is trying to hook up with your wife, he may also be trying it with other wives in the group. Likely the others in a shared group would not want to cheat her around who has been trying, or likely to try, luring away another friend's wife, girlfriend. Original poster. No. Our concern is that outing him blows up the friend group, and my wife and I will probably be blamed, at least partially, for not telling people sooner. I think there is a strong chance Rick divorces his wife and exits the group naturally, which solves the problem for us. Isn't Rick divorced already from his wife? Original poster. I think there is a decent chance either one pulls the plug. She has made comments to my wife in the past that she might want to exit, and Rick has made comments to both me and my wife that he probably will. But they do have a kid together, and that always makes things complicated. I think if no kid, they'd be long split. Update now to the updates. A few weeks ago, I had a heartfelt discussion with my wife where we recapped everything that happened over the last year, and I asked her a bunch of probing questions that got into the why and how the affair happened. I also gave her a one-time forgiveness window to get anything else off her chest, with the corresponding threat that if anything else material came out in the future, she'd be receiving divorce papers. I learned a lot, and while it doesn't excuse my wife's misdeeds, I can empathize with her and her predicament. I now know that the emotional affair started earlier than she originally admitted, although it was a gradual shift from friendship to more, so it's tough to pick a specific commencement date. It all started because Rick is fat, and my wife offered to help coach him on his weight loss journey. My wife successfully got down to her high school weight after our third kid, and she thought that if Rick implemented her diet, he could get down to a more reasonable weight himself. Initially, this meant she called him a couple of times a week to check in and see what he was eating, give tips, and ask if he had any questions. Apparently, they'd talk at the start of his lunch break, and she'd remind him to make good food choices. I was supportive of her coaching, as Rick was my best friend at the time, and his weight was a major source of marital strife. His wife thinks he let himself go and nags him constantly about his poor food choices. It also worked as he lost weight with my wife's support. Over several months, they went from talking a few times a week to talking every weekday, and the topics expanded beyond Rick's diet, with Rick's marital issues becoming a major topic. My wife was now his therapist, in addition to his dietitian. After a few months, my wife realized that Rick likely had an inappropriate attachment to her. She told me that he referred to her as goddess and hung on to every word she said. But he also hadn't done anything overtly inappropriate yet, and my wife assumed that he was a solid guy and wouldn't take things further. She also admitted that she found the attention flattering since he treated her like the smartest and most interesting person in the world. Things veered into being completely inappropriate on Christmas Day of 23. My wife had been debating some outfits for New Year's Eve, and she texted a couple options to both me and him separately and asked for thoughts. Around 1 a.m. that night, Rick responded with a text saying this one underneath one of the dresses, and he attached a short video of him masturbating and ejaculating. I've unfortunately seen the video. My wife should have immediately told me. Instead, she tried to pretend like it never happened. She rationalized it on the basis of Rick being very drunk. He got into a fight with his wife on Christmas and went on a drunken bender that night. And she assumed that sober Rick would never have sent that text. She also knew that if she told me that it would blow up my friendship with Rick, and she was worried that it would taint the memory of Christmas for me. She also admitted that there was something a little flattering about knowing that she looked good enough in the outfit for someone to be masturbating to her in it. To my wife's credit, she cut off contact with Rick for several weeks. She missed their calls, however, and after we went on a cruise with Rick and his family for my birthday, and Rick acted normally during it, she resumed their weekday calls. She told me that she hoped things could go back to the way they were. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be, and soon they were talking almost every day of the week. She'd talk to him on the weekends when I was off with the kids at their sporting events. My wife's sister actually warned her at this point that she felt the relationship was inappropriate, and my wife recognized that this was true but rationalized it as long as it's just talking and nothing physical happens, it's not cheating, especially since she had no physical or romantic attraction to Rick. She just enjoyed the fawning attention. My wife also went through a mental health crisis during all this, since my wife is bipolar and her medication lost much of its efficacy. She told me at the time, and I wish I had acted on it sooner, that she was disassociating at times and feeling like her actions were not her own. From there, what happened is covered in my other post. There was one big update, however, and it is unfortunately a horrible one. Rick effectively sexually assaulted my wife. She had previously admitted that Rick kissed her when I went to the restroom. That is not quite the whole story. I remember the night as it was several days before I discovered the affair. Rick had come over and the three of us were drinking heavily and listening to music, and Rick was playing along to the songs on a guitar. Around almost a.m., I decided to go to bed. My wife and Rick still wanted to hang, so I went up by myself. They were being too loud for me to sleep, however, so I decided to come back downstairs after 10 minutes or so. Walking down the stairs, I remember hearing what I thought sounded kind of like kissing sounds, but by the time I could see them, everything seemed normal, so I chalked it up to my ears playing tricks. In our heart-to-heart, however, my wife admitted that they made out that night and that my ears didn't deceive me. She doesn't actually remember any of it. She was blackout drunk that night and barely coherent. When we finally called it, I had to carry her up the stairs to our bedroom, where I helped her throw up before tucking her in bed. She only learned what happened the next day when Rick apparently called and told her that he enjoyed their makeout session. She still feels intense shame for this, although I don't fault her too much. She was incredibly drunk and in no state to consent to anything, and what Rick did to her was legally sexual assault. For all I know, she may have thought she was kissing me. Yes, she was that drunk. I wish she had told me all this sooner, as she was a victim that night, but she was too ashamed and embarrassed, particularly because it crossed her own internal line of, as long as nothing physical happens, it's not cheating. And so she instead made up the story of him kissing her while I went to the bathroom, which she admits was wrong. Rick has thankfully fallen off the face of the earth, which is good because I hate that fat hell. I did run into him recently, and I, perhaps immaturely, told him that he was a pervert and a sensual predator. He stormed off, and I doubt I'll see much of him in the future. I also experience a great deal of schadenfreude in knowing that he's gained a lot of weight. He was probably 300 pounds when my wife started helping him. He got down to about 250 pounds with her help, and he is now up to probably 400 pounds. Good for him, I say. Meanwhile, my wife and I are doing well, and the trauma of the last year has surprisingly brought us closer together. She really is a fantastic person, notwithstanding everything that happened. Sheehan has been a model wife and partner since I broke up the affair. So there is a happy ending, despite a ton of screwed up crap that has happened over the last 18 months. Relevant comments. Commenter. 1. In that case, then, you went upstairs to sleep and left your wife alone with a man in a state so drunk she couldn't walk? Original poster. That's fair. I would not have left my wife in that state with most men. I just trusted Rick and figured she was safe, given that she was in our own house and with someone I thought was a stand-up guy. I also don't think I realized just how drunk she was until I brought her upstairs. I had thought she was drunk, but not I can't walk drunk. But I definitely made a mistake that night. One I'll never make again. Commenter 2. Wow, man, you put up with so much more than any normal person would have. I hope your wife realizes how amazing you are because I sure see a lot of trickle-truthing from your wife in every post. Original poster. Oh, she thankfully does. She's been an amazing spouse since this all happened. She realized that she almost blew up her life and is very lucky that I didn't leave her, and she's been trying to make it up to me. I effectively have unlimited brownie points at the moment,